right, Margo Lovett here. It looks like we are recording. Brand new software. Yes, I am here with Trina Ramsey, another powerful woman. And when I say powerful, her footprint goes deep as far as her contribution to women, and not just women of color, but all women. When I read her bio, and as you know, as a journalist, you dig deep and you see where this trail takes you. I noticed two words kept coming up: chief and development. So it seems to me that this woman has dedicated her life, her professional life and personal life, to being a chief and to the development of not only herself, but to others. So welcome, Trina Ramsey. It is a pleasure to meet you.
Oh, the pleasure is mine, Margo. It's such a pleasure to be here, and thank you. I'm really excited about today.
Well, there are a lot of career and life coaches out there. But today, I want to let people know that you are certified. There is a difference. There is a big difference. You are a certified career and life coach. So that tells me, Trina, that when a person comes to you, and I'm thinking that your demographic, your client is mainly us boomers, us 40 on up, and I see that you didn't even put a limit on it. If a person is 88 years old and they want to work with you, come on. Is that what I hear you say?
That's exactly right. I said, and beyond. Women in their fierce 40s, fabulous 50s, sensational 60s, and beyond. Because we never stop growing.
We really don't. And before we get into the meat of that subject, do you find that that is the feeling and the mindset of more women in our generation than in our parents' generation? What's your take on that?
I believe so. I think that we have definitely we've benefited from our forefathers and mothers in that we are able to make daring moves like you have made with launching this podcast. We're able to reimagine. Back in the day, a lot of times our mothers and grandmothers weren't even working outside the home because they were full-time caregivers. And when they were, it was about like having longevity and being at a job until you retired for those 20, 30, 40 years. And right now, we are in such era of entrepreneurship, multipreneurship, and side gigs, side hustle, all of these things, multiple streams of income that makes living so much richer because it also allows us to explore multiple passions and pull them together so that we can explore multiple sides of ourselves as well. It's very exciting.
That's important. That is very important. And you're right. When I think back about my mother, her gifts, her talents, they were sequestered right there in the home. My dad worked every day. And yeah, you grow up with this thought, you better get that good paying job, get that education, get that good paying job. And baby, you better stay there until you drop or 30 years has come and gone,
Yep.
And that's what my dad did. And so many people, he worked in the factory, so many people were not able to do that, or they died shortly after reaching that. So it is good to know that there is a career and life coach who can help us remove that mindset and step into the fullness of our next. So when a woman comes to you, Trina, and I know you can't go into all of this, but what meat and potatoes questions do you ask them so that you can get to the root of where they really want to go? And do we usually know what our next is?
Yeah. Many times there's a pain point that someone is responding to. And that happened with me, even in choosing my coaching career. I was going to work angry, and I was angry at one person in particular. And that's not who I am. I am like the person who's called sweet and nice and so on and so forth. So I knew that was a red flag right there. But sometimes we will just ignore those things and not do anything about it and just, accept the misery rather than explore what's possible. And in a lot of cases, people don't know. Like they haven't even given themselves permission. And be honest with you, Margo, it took me a couple times around for me to actually choose to pursue coaching because the first time I said no to myself. I talk about this a lot. My background is in nonprofit fundraising. I was at a kind of like a crossroads and thinking about taking another job. And I had a conversation with myself where I was like, yeah, you're a leader. People look up to you. You're positive. You give advice. You gather mentees. You should really think about becoming a life coach. Now, I've been at this for over 10 years. So this is before, like the industry has ballooned since when, like sometimes people didn't even know what a life coach was at that point. But I was like, no, you're a fundraiser. You don't have those credentials. You don't have training. Just go get another fundraising job. And that's what I did until a few years later, I was in a weekend personal development workshop. Shout out to Momentum Education. That is where my awakening happened. And it was during some like mirror moments, like some really deep excavation that I actually awoke into like, wait, I said no to myself. I didn't even give myself a chance to even think about it or explore it. And I just thank God that I actually had that awakening, but some people never do, or some people stay stuck with the fear of not, being able to pursue what's in their heart, or thinking that it's selfish, or thinking that they have a duty to XYZ company, or in my case, nonprofits. I'm actually launching a whole nonprofit practice now because I believe that women executives in nonprofits, we have it doubly because we really are like in service and we think that, we're needed, and it becomes self-sacrificing and it's just not good. It's not good. And we all get to choose. We all get to just do you.
Mm-hmm. The burnout rate for nonprofits is very, very high. I saw my sister go through that. It's very real. You speak of your coaching practice. It is Perspectives Plus Coaching. You've been there doing this for over 11 years, opening up the door for women to understand what their next is. I'm wondering, and I'm hanging around this career and life coaching because with the pandemic, so many women did not want to, such as you. Maybe they circled around and thought, oh, I'll change. Oh, I'll make a difference. Oh, later. But now, here we go. Last year, so many people were forced to make a change, were forced to think differently. And I myself begin to think that is going to be an ongoing way of life. What do you say to those women? Is there anything in particular that you can say right now so that they will not feel hopeless, fearful, all those things that come with this big, massive change of no more job, no more corporate, or maybe I have to put two jobs together? That whole change. What do we say to them?
Well, there's a couple things. Number one, the reality of our current situation is that we lost a lot of people last year to COVID-19, to other things. And every time you lose someone untimely or in a, like when it wasn't prepared, like when you weren't prepared for it because it wasn't like a life-threatening illness, it's a moment of truth. It's a moment where you can really recognize that my life matters. I matter. And I don't know how much, like, we only have today. One of my favorite songs is from the musical Rent, and it's No Day But Today. There is no future. There is no past. And we have to make this moment last. And of course, that musical was around the AIDS crisis, but here we are with another major health crisis, right? And a lot of that is applicable. And so, I am so grateful that it only took me a few years to awaken to my true purpose, because I might not have ever had that moment. And a lot of people will. They'll be kind of stuck worrying about the benefits, worrying about, well, what if I'm not good at it? And what I say is, what is the cost of not making a choice? What is the cost of not choosing yourself? And sometimes that shows up. We were talking about the women in the nonprofits. Stress, health issues related to the stress, loss of relationships related to, you mentioned the executive who died on the job because he was overworking. You know, who knows what his family and romantic life was like because you're out of balance. And so it is really about taking a fresher look at your entire life and what's important, and having that urgency, that sense of urgency, and also to confront fear, because it's not really about being fearless, because fear can be a powerful motivator as well. So we can actually use it, but we have to learn to be able to confront it and move through it.
Mm-hmm. Rather than stay paralyzed and a captive to it. Got you. When it comes to your career and life coaching, it doesn't have any gender attached, because what I hear is good for everybody, anybody that needs to make a change. They're reinventing, my favorite word. But I love the fact that you wrote a book, Just Do You, a Declaration of Independence from Guilt, Obligation, and Shame. Now, you usually work with us 40 and up. Were you thinking about us when you wrote that book? And it is a bestseller.
Yes, thank you. Oh my gosh, this was one of the most beautiful moments in my life. And when I first started coaching, you were saying coaching can be for everyone. When you go through coaching school, they kind of set you up in, like, you know, business basics and things like that. And they talk about having a niche. And at first you kind of want to resist it because, you know, I was like, well, I want to coach everybody. I can coach men, I can coach women, I can coach kids, you know. But the truth of the matter is, the more that you specialize and the more that you narrow your focus into your niche market is actually where you'll find that juice, because you'll be able to speak in the language of the person who needs you, and you will be able to show up more specifically. And so the backstory of writing that book, I had tried to write a book before I had specialized and focused on women. And I formed the Just Do You Institute for Women's Empowerment as a result of some additional training, business training I got from actually one of my other coaches. And she was Denise Hart, who was really helping to, like, you know, kind of beat that like funnel. Like, you got more juice to squeeze out of this. And it was in her workshops that the Just Do You concept was born, and the focus on women over 40. I was about to turn 50. I was journaling, and I had tried to write a book before, and it was like, I would say my voice was generic as a coach. So the Perspectives Plus coaching was the early days of my coaching. It was too generic, and it was coming off as any coach in the world could say these things because we've all had the same type of training, right? I was turning 50 and I started journaling. You know, you're getting to be 50. You've learned some things. What have you learned? And I got to a list of 70 something lessons. And I looked down and I was like, this is my book. And I ended up working with a good friend of mine who has a micro press, is a Black woman who we've been friends for years and years, also from nonprofits, but she's got 2 master's degrees, and she decided that she wanted to help women to own their voices and to become published authors. Her name is Kim Brown of Minerva Rising Press, and she's brilliant because she really helped me. She saved my manuscript. I was going to throw some mess out there because you can self-publish a thing, right? But she helped me groom that thing. She helped me really get the title right. She helped me to really have my voice be more impactful and to have a through line all the way through. And it was for the women over 40. It was for my tribe of those women who have spent a lot of time saying no to themselves or being too caught up in their career, their family, the obligations, church, otherwise community. We get ourselves pulled into a lot of directions and we have no time for ourselves to even think about what's good for us and what's possible for the future. We don't have energy to dream or to think about the future. And that's who this book is for.
And I love the title. I love the concept behind it, and so many of us need to pick this up on a regular daily basis because so many are not able to say no the way we should, and then we wonder why we're burned out. We wonder why we are angry. We wonder why we're anxious. we're looking at everybody like they're crazy, and they're looking at us like we're crazy. Well, you should have said no. So I love, I mean, your heart for women,
Mm.
and what you bring to the table is so very vast. I'm glad that you took that step outside of nonprofit, the fundraising and that type of thing. And I'm sure you still have affiliations with that world, but the work that you're doing now is amazing. Which brings me to the fact that you are a big time contributing author to
Mm.
WomELLE magazine.
Uh,
And I have read your articles. I have one, no shame to the game. Let me show everybody. Here's one, has a paper clip on it. It stays right there. It really doesn't need it. But it's time to sharpen your saw. I reflect back up on this often because I do come from the generation where you work, 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 you accumulate this, you make this happen. It's accomplishments. And it's the accomplishments that define who you are and who you're going to marry and all of this stuff. And when I read your article, I had to remember that no, that's not it at all. What I had to take away was you have to take time to care for yourself, and that rest and sleep, that balance, spiritual health, and just being able to enjoy life. You want to speak to that on a deeper level, because I know you're the author of the article. You can't write something like this unless you know it, unless you live it.
oh, absolutely. And let me tell you, my backstory is, I went through a lot of trauma and trials as a young person. I lost my mother when I was 14 to suicide. It's part of the platform that I am picking up to really give voice to that, because I spent a lot of years, and I was the oldest daughter. My twin sisters are 7 years younger than me. So when she died, and even before, I became mini mom. And so there was like this kind of superwoman thing that kind of got thrust upon me, and we get really proud of that, being able to like uh, just endure and persevere and take on other people's challenges and problems and being self-sacrificing, and it wears on you. And one of the things, and I know we're similar age group, so I know you'll remember the movie Soul Food.
Yes.
The sister Terry is who was the attorney, and she was the fixer of the family. And she was the one who, would bail people out financially whenever stuff went down. She was the one who figured it out. And she went through this period where she was going through panic attacks. She was in her office on the floor crying. And I have been in that place, where you close the office door and you shed the tears and you fix your makeup and put the mask back on, or run to the bathroom because you can't let anybody see you sweat. And so I've been through all of that because I was so married to my external persona of the woman who could do it all and could have it all. And there's a cost to it. There's an emotional cost. There are there could be relationship costs, and also health. Like stress turns into cortisol, which can really, do a lot of long-term damage to your body. And if you're not exercising or getting proper rest, then that's when these long-term diseases can also, take hold, because God only gave us one body. And, we can only live as long as we allow to be able to take care of our temple. So, yeah, those are part of the reason I wrote that article, because I feel like there are times, and if I can remember right, because it was a while ago when I wrote it, but I think I was juxtaposing, a lot of times we talk about achievement, like these are the things you do, these are the books you should read, these are the ways to get ahead, and, and it's about churn and showing up and performance and all of these things. And it's like, well, what about you? What about you? And how are you taking care of yourself so that you can be there for yourself, for your family? And that it's not always you on the back end, or it's not, the day you can't get out of bed because you're depressed, or because you've hit a wall, or you have a car accident because you're too distracted and sleep deprived because you're not paying attention. Those are the costs that we have. And this is what happens to a lot of us, especially, I will say, women of color. We have grown up in a white supremacist society for over 400 years, and we're only beginning to actually give voice to the long-term costs of what we have sacrificed with our bodies and with our talent and with our mind and our energy and our mental health in trying to prove ourselves to other folks. And so I say, let's stop proving and let's take care of ourselves.
I'm glad you brought that up, Trina, because the bottom line is that we have to learn to give ourselves permission to rest, to
Yes.
be happy, to
Yes.
achieve what we can achieve, and then know that we are enough. I mean, 400
Exactly.
years, come on. I think our ancestors bought that property for us. Let's now put our stake in the ground and let's be better. We have to be better for ourselves, better for our communities. But I feel a soapbox coming on, so I'm going to
I
step
know.
down.
I know.
I
Can I
want to
make a
ask,
little pivot too? Because I want to open it up for our sisters who are not from the Black community, especially during COVID times, right? We have had parents who have had to compress their work and their family life together, who have had to literally be on Zoom calls for work while they're trying to manage their children, who may not be adept, who may not have the aptitude to be learning online, and so they're going to need that support. And then literally, like, you have even less time for yourself because everybody's in the house together. Now, prayerfully, we are starting to move out of that, but there definitely has been some impact to parents, and in a lot of cases, but not all, it falls to the mother. But sometimes it is the dad as well, who is just stretching themselves even thinner. And like, I remember when my kids were growing up, and I would go to pick them up for aftercare because I was working. We had two parent working households, so both of us were working, and I would have them in the aftercare program. And I remember going to park for like 5 or 10 minutes before I actually went to pick them up because I needed that little buffer to be able to kind of get my brain together, or I would park and get out and walk for a little bit because I was feeling that stress to like run up to, be there by 6 to pick them up, and then all of a sudden you got your new hat on and you got to run home and make dinner and things of that nature. And here these poor people are doing it all within the same four walls with their family.
that's a good place to end. I'm looking at the time. That is an excellent place to end this conversation. I'm also thinking people are going to feel that same amount of pressure and stress. And you may want to speak to this also, Trina, when things open up again.
Yes.
I see that Texas is opening up. It's carte blanche in Mississippi. And what is that going to look like? That's another set of stressors. We're back on the freeways. We're back in the traffic jams. Myself, I'm hoping that businesses, people that are working at home, those that want to, are
Hmm.
given the opportunity to remain there. Their routines are there. Um, what do you say about that change? That's
Yeah,
going to be huge.
absolutely. And so we've now been under this environment for a year, and it's going to go, for a bit longer in some cases. I know they're here in San Francisco. The school districts are starting to open up and have students come back to classes, but it creates it's almost like a whiplash. So to some extent, yeah, it's comfortable to be able to like keep your pajama bottoms and slippers on and work from home as long as you got, you're good from the chest up, right? Uh, and not have to worry about commuting, not have to worry about being on public transportation and getting back to those schedules. And I believe that now is the time to start to instill those rituals of self-care, even if it's 10, 15 minutes. Like I block off 12 to 1 every single day so that I can like have a break. So because I was finding myself like overworking into the lunch hour, maybe not eating lunch until 2 or 3 in the afternoon. and then being cranky, right? Because you're hangry. So all of these things, we have to actually be mindful about how we are. Just as there is like this stage reopening logistically, we have to really kind of get ourselves and our family set up to be ready for that. And like you said, to maybe renegotiate. If there's a situation for whom working at home has worked for an individual, a family, and they have proven that they can still do their job, why not be able to, like, maybe you could, like, if you can't do it 100%, maybe you go to the office 2 days out of the week or something like that.
Renegotiate. Say something, though.
Mm-hmm.
I think that a lot of companies are going to be, a lot of people are going to do a lot of asking, as they really, really should,
Mm-hmm.
because our world was turned upside down. The globe was turned upside
Absolutely.
down. And, excuse me, there are so many things to, as they say, unpack, which is an overused term, but we have to unpack and make sure that we give ourselves permission to take care of ourselves and own our feelings. Do you? And I promise, I have one final question.
Oh, I'm
is
fine. I'm
fascinating
having
to
a
me.
ball.
But we see it on people's faces. Some people are working and they are still worried about meeting the mortgage, about their financial situations. And now the government, well, we're going to give a stimulus. We're not going to give it. It's going to be this much, or you're not going to get anything. All this pressure. And then you have the kids. And out here in Southern California, they talk about food. Well, I guess it's everywhere. Food insecurity. So we have to give ourselves permission to say, I'm angry. I'm tired. I need some help. What's your feeling on people reaching out to therapists? What do you say about that?
Listen, I have a therapist. It is one of the reasons that I'm able to function today. And it took me a while to get to that point, but this is part of like the other piece of my journey. And maybe we could talk another time about mental illness and the stigma that I carried from what happened with my mother and the shame that I carried around that. And I wrote about it in one of the anthologies that I contributed to for the first time. But slowly over time, I have been on this whole kind of like reckoning for myself to understand that none of it is about shame. It's about health. It's about healing. And when people commit suicide or attempt, it's because they've run out of hope. And sometimes it's because they are not, they're too afraid of the stigma of the labels of, to be able to reach out and get help. And especially now, we know that this is not, mental illness is on the rise. The stress, the anxiety that we have all been through these last 12 months has really brought all of this to the surface. And that's part of the reason that I am more unapologetic about talking about it. So I'm really, really glad you asked the question. It is imperative for us to get the help we need. And I wish usually when I write about it, I have the suicide hotline right at the bottom of the page so that I would rattle it off right now, because there are so many resources available. And sometimes it's just about not like pushing through that fear, like I mentioned before, the fear of being labeled or the fear of what will people think. Like if we would be able to own our own worth and our own wellness to the point where we actually are willing to get out of it's not even a comfort zone because you're already uncomfortable, but just be willing to reach for help and reach for support. I just recently also joined NAMI, which is the National Association of Mental Illness, NAMI.org. And they have resources not only for individuals, but also for family members. They have support groups. They have training. At this point, of course, everything is virtual. So you can look up, they have chapters all throughout the country. So if you need support, that's a good place to go.
I would have ventured. I'm glad that the conversation went that way, because there's so many people suffering in silence.
Yes.
What's somebody going to think? What's it going to cost?
Mm-hmm.
That's the other thing. So, wow, this is the information and the help that you can get from a certified um, career and life coach. I think that you really opened it up as to the benefits of working with someone such as yourself. And I'm not lowballing people that are young getting into this business.
Mhm.
But when you get with someone who is seasoned, who's been around, they're not only putting the academics to test, but they're also bringing in that extra. I bought that property. I bought that address. I know about that. And that is priceless. So
Yeah.
people need to pay attention to that when they're trying to find a career coach, career and slash life coach, because most of the time, tell me if I'm wrong, the two go together. You can't.
Yeah, I do. Like when I coach people, like it. It's very rarely a little bucket. I coach the whole person, and I also talk about I do both inner work and outer work. The outer work is about the goals and the obstacles and the aspirations and how to do it. But the inner work, that's that stuff about self-esteem, worthiness, um, being willing to say no, being willing to stretch and say yes, being willing to set boundaries, and also address the fear. Because the fear is the number one dream killer. I think that's another article I wrote for WomELLE, was just around fear in and of itself. It'll stop you in your tracks, but you can't avoid it. It's just how you use it.
Gotcha. Wow. Trina Ramsey, career and life coach, international best-selling author. You come with your book, Just Do You, a declaration of independence from guilt, obligation, and shame. You are the I want to say the rah-rah person, but you are the motivator for us folks 40 and to the moon. If you're 88, 90, or 100, and you want to make a change, this lady, Trina Ramsey, is the person to get in contact with. Are you still writing for the magazine, correct?
Yes, I am. Yep.
Okay. Well, I
Yep.
tell you.
It's such a blessing, and thank you to Nagilia for her vision of bringing us together. Women supporting women is so important. There's a lot of stigma and little stories about women, and it's furthered by these different reality shows with women at each other's throats and things like that. But I believe that like energy attracts like energy. And I have a number of sister circles and professional circles, and I am so pleased to be a part of the WomELLE family as well. And I'm really happy, like I said in our email, to finally get to meet you and talk to you, because we've been in this space together tangentially. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. That's the power of collaboration. And that we are going to have to come together and talk about on another episode. I thought about that. I said, this is the power of collaboration right here. And people need to understand how, oh, wow, though that runs so deep. But I respect your time. I respect the information that you have given people, Trina. I know that it is a beacon of light and hope and help, because so many times we have these needs, we have these questions, we have these fears. We don't know who to go to. So now everybody, the whole world knows what Trina Ramsey is all about.
Awesome.
Pleasure to meet you, have this conversation. And yes, indeed, you are a powerful woman.
Oh,
Indeed, you are.
thank you so much. This has been just a blast. And thank you for what you're doing to contribute to this amazing effort this month. And happy International Women's Month.
Indeed, indeed, indeed. I'm Margo Lovett, and I will see you at the next conversation. Bye-bye now.
Bye bye.